I hereby call this special session, May 4th, 2021, beginning at 6:30 p.m. In session. I would like to make note that the special session will continue on to May 5th as necessary, beginning at 7:30 p.m. On May 5th, tomorrow, this regular session will begin at 6:30, but the special session will start at 7:30. And continuing on to May 6th as necessary to begin at 6:30 p.m. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Rallo.
Here.
Councilmember Boland. Okay, I see he's there. Councilmember Rosenberger.
Here.
Councilmember Scambolari.
Here.
Councilmember Sims.
Here.
Councilmember Flaherty.
Here.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
And Councilmember Sandberg.
I'm here too.
I see.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I saw council
if we could hold off for one quick second, I think there she is.
Are we looking for Councilmember Sandberg?
Yes.
Okay. Is she able to answer the roll call?
Yes, just got reconnected. I'm losing connections.
Thank you very much.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you fine. Do you hear us?
Now I can. Thank you.
Good. Okay. All council members are present and accounted for. We'll do an agenda summation. First, we'll talk about and set the conduct for deliberations, and not only for this evening, but for the next two scheduled special sessions if needed. We'll continue deliberations on Ordinance 21-23, which is to amend Title 20 of the Unified Development Ordinance of the Bloomington Municipal Code regarding regulations related to dwelling duplex, dwelling triplex, and dwelling fourplex set forth in Bloomington Municipal Code 20.03 and 20.04. Then we'll move to Ordinance 21-24 to repeal and replace the official zoning map within Title 20 of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Unified Development Ordinance. Then we'll attend to matters of council schedule. And then I would entertain a motion to recess if we don't get through tonight's business, or a motion to adjourn if we do. Now we'll go back up to conduct for deliberations. A parliamentarian Flaherty, set close and make sure I do this correctly. I do believe that the rules were suspended at our last meeting. And as president, I would like to set the time to recess this evening at 11 p.m. I do believe that will require a motion to recess. I also know that depending on where we are in the schedule, a motion with 2/3 majority can extend that period as decided. Also carrying it over from the rules suspended the last meeting, and we'll do that with specifically Ordinance 21-23, is that we allow 3 minutes per community member for public comment, and we will remain at 3 minutes per public comment for our citizens. I would also like to set a limit for council members' comments to 3 minutes per council member. And I do believe Councilmember Flaherty, did that cover it?
Yeah, just a question or two for clarification,
Yes.
if you don't mind. When you mentioned council member comment or council member comments, you mean during debate on any given amendment or the ordinance?
Yes.
A limit of 3 minutes per member, and
Yes.
the limit of 3 minutes per member of the public will be for all amendments and ordinances amended.
Correct.
Okay, and I'm not sure. I'm not recalling personally. Maybe someone else does. Maybe our council staff does. When we last suspended rules, I'm not sure we can do that to apply to a future meeting. So this is the beginning of this special session. I think it would be in order to for you, President Sims, to move to suspend the orders to follow the schedule you just outlined, which we could then approve if it's the will of the council by a 2/3 majority.
Thank you very much. Okay, and that is to repeat what I just said. Yes. Okay, thank you. I'd like to make a motion that we set the time tonight to recess at 11 p.m. I'd also include in that motion that we set limits on council members for debate at 3 minutes per council member. We will continue at 3 minutes per citizen for public comment.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I really should have teed this up better. And that this is my fault, not yours. It's I think in order for someone other than the president to make a motion. I appreciate you outlining the structure.
That's what I thought. I thought you just said I need to make the motion. So
no, I'm happy to make a motion. I just meant we needed a motion to suspend the rules. My apology. Okay. I'd be happy to make that motion now.
Thank you. Please do.
I move we suspend the rules to structure this special session in the following manner: to recess no later than 11 p.m. On any night the special session takes place, to set public comment period per individual for 3 minutes, and to set a limit of 3 minutes per council member for comments during debate.
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and second. Will the clerk please call the roll on this motion?
Council Member Bolin?
Yes.
Council Member Rosenbarger?
Yes.
Council Member Scambolari?
Yes.
Council Member Sims?
Yes.
Council Member Flaherty?
Yes.
Council Member Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Council Member Smith?
Yes.
Council Member Sandberg?
Yes.
And Council Member Rollo?
Yes.
Thank you. And that motion is adopted 9-0. What I would like to do is at our last session, we stopped or recessed while still having, I think, 19 or 20 people in the queue for public comment. And we would like to, once we get back to public comment, start with those folks that we have identified that were still in the queue. And the clerk's office has that list. Then we will move on to others who wish to comment. And please remember, we're currently on Amendment 1 of Ordinance 21-23. And then others that are here to comment on that amendment. We will continue on with 3 minutes per person on public comment. Okay. And before we get started back onto where we left off, I have asked staff, Ms. Jackie Scanlon, to give us a brief overview of this ordinance. She's already given a report that we've all heard and we're able to provide questions. So I've asked her to give a brief overview of that. Councilmember Flaherty.
I'll let you finish. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was going to ask her to do a brief overview, and council questions will not be allowed on this brief recap. Okay, Councilmember Flaherty. Go ahead, Councilmember Flaherty.
Yes, I appreciate the overview for the benefit of council members and members of the public. A quick point of clarification or two, if it would be okay with the president, on procedural issues.
Yes.
First, as a technical matter, we met as committee in the form of committee of the whole last week. In that meeting, once we rose and chose to rise and report at the end of the night, that meeting was over. So we are now in the special session of council, technically in the territory of second reading of these two ordinances, Ordinance 21 and 2023 and 2124. So to begin discussion of 2123 tonight, we'll need a motion to introduce first and then to adopt. That will get us to the stage of ready for the presentation from Ms. Scanlon and for ready for continued discussion of Amendment 1 in the format and process that you outlined, President Sims. So just wanted to clarify that, and then happy to make that motion on Ordinance 2123 as well.
Thank you for making sure we're on track, and please proceed.
Mr. President, I move that Ordinance 2123 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded that the clerk read Ordinance 21-23, I do believe. I'm sorry, making sure I'm on there. That's 21-23 by title and synopsis only.
Okay, Ordinance 2123 to amend Title 20 Unified Development Ordinance of the Bloomington Municipal Code regarding regulations related to dwelling, duplex, dwelling, triplex.
Point of order.
Mr. President,
Point of order. I'm sorry.
do we need a vote on the motion to read?
Yeah.
Yes. I
Okay.
was
Sorry.
trying to get in there and get in hit of Miss Stoll. I do apologize.
My apologies as well.
No. Clerk, will you please call the roll on the motion?
Councilmember Rosenberger.
Yeah.
Councilmember Scambolari.
Yes.
Councilmember Sims.
Yes.
Councilmember Flaherty.
Yes.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Sandberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Rollo.
Yes.
Councilmember Bowen.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes 9-0. Now will the clerk please read?
Yes, I will. Ordinance 2123 to amend Title 20 Unified Development Ordinance of the Bloomington Municipal Code regarding regulations related to dwelling duplex, dwelling triplex, and dwelling fourplex set forth in the Bloomington Municipal Code 20.03 and 20.04. Synopsis: this petition amends regulations related to the uses dwelling duplex, dwelling triplex, and dwelling fourplex, including in which districts they are permitted or conditional, and their use specific standards.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Flaherty.
Mr. President, I move that Ordinance 2123 be adopted.
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded. As we discussed earlier, we will now commence with a brief overview from staff member Scanlon. So we'll proceed with that, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Tonight we are discussing Amendment 1 to Ordinance 21-23. The purpose of that ordinance is to allow the uses duplex, triplex, and fourplex in various locations in town. So the proposal that council is seeing from the Plan Commission allows duplexes as permitted in the R1, R2, R3, and R4 zoning districts, and allows triplexes as conditional in the R4 only, and amends the use specific standards for the duplex, triplex, and fourplex. So you can see on the left, this is the existing use table showing that duplexes are conditional in the existing RE zoning district and permitted in the existing R4, and triplexes are permitted in the R4 as well. And then the proposal on the right that the use duplex would be permitted in the 4 districts and triplex as conditional. The asterisk is something that we're cleaning up with this petition. Those shown on the left aren't administrable. As I mentioned, the use-specific standards are being proposed to be changed, and those, some will remain the same and some will become different. And you can see here the full proposal on the right. Again, for duplex, the use-specific standards include a regulation that property owner or hand registered agent for a property shall have no notices of violation on file with the Planning and Transportation Department for the prior 3 years in order to be eligible to request a duplex. Occupancy of each dwelling unit in a duplex is subject to the definition of family. And then we have some design requirements that new duplexes will have separate exterior entrances facing a street, and that those are being renovated or expanded shall have at least one in order to remain in character with the other structures in the area. The second design requirement being that the design elements of a duplex shall be similar in general shape, size, and design, with the majority of the existing single family and duplex structures on the same block face, that being related to roof pitch, front porch width and depth, front building setback, and vehicle parking access, no more than 6 bedrooms in a duplex, and that each unit will be individually metered. Some that were removed are proposed to be removed are provision related to the legality of using the property as a duplex based on previous zoning designations, and also one that was connected to a potential demolition permit and whether or not one had been issued on the site, as well as the removal of a 40-foot width maximum provision. Triplex and fourplex have similar use-specific standards with the notice of violation provision, the design standards related to roof pitch, front porch width, depth, front building setback, and vehicle access. Also a maximum number of bedrooms, 12 for a fourplex and 9 for a triplex, again, having to be individually metered, and then also having a minimum of 1 exterior entrance, again, to be in line with other buildings in the area, no more than 2. So we discussed some existing conditions at Committee of the Whole, the gist of which, because I'm trying to say short, is that Bloomington Housing Study 2010 census data indicate that we do have a housing shortage. And part of this proposal is to propose to offer more housing options for people in Bloomington, because a large percentage of our area and our parcels are dedicated to single family only. So we propose to open those up to some plex options in areas, primarily a duplex, and then triplex and fourplex in other areas to help address our need for more housing. Again, you saw this map previously. These are the historic districts. Those areas have additional regulations that where buildings cannot be demolished without approval from the Historic Preservation Commission. We also have demolition delay, where those buildings that are requested to be demolished have to be reviewed by that commission as well. We have some existing plexes, of course, in town, roughly 700 at last count. And we also have some existing plexes in areas that could, we also have some areas that have current plex options right now in the 4 districts I have listed here, and that have existing single family lots that could, under current code, be turned over to plexes, and we have not seen that request in the last year that's been possible for any of those lots, which we call to mind because we have been hearing a lot that people are worried that plexes will come in very quickly and take over neighborhoods, and we have not seen any evidence that that is probable. Again, we discussed this existing rental data. There are just under 3,000 active rental addresses in our existing RE, R2, R3 zoning districts, with roughly 3,600 rental units. And 2/3 of those are owned by 2/3 of the units are owned by people who live in Bloomington or have Bloomington addresses. Something that we looked into because of the concerns we heard about outside developers kind of taking over or being the primary users of rental properties. And we found that in actuality, many who live here have supplemental income or their main income coming from owning rental properties here as well. And here's some information related to single family zoning and use, not the same thing. We have in our district, in our land that's not zoned for institutional, so land that we're not located, not IU owned or government owned, 51% of that land is dedicated to only single family uses. And that also equals 73% of those parcels. So of the land that is not dedicated to IU or the government, we are saying now that 3/4 of those parcels can only have one dwelling on them, and it has to be single family. We are not proposing to change the areas where single family is allowed. It is currently allowed in 14 of our 18 zoning districts as detached. And actually there is a 15th district where it is allowed as attached. We are not proposing to change that. We are only proposing to add the option for additional uses. So the department is proposing to again add the option for plexes in town, primarily duplexes, with some areas for conditional triplexes and fourplexes in order to help us address our housing need, which includes needing more units, needing more options so that people have options somewhere between buying a large single family and renting a small apartment or a student housing focused apartment versus a large single family. Those are our main two those are the main two products that we put out that we see here in town now. So we are proposing an incremental change to allow some areas of town to be able to have duplexes. So this particular amendment is to remove that in the R1, R2, and R3. And we are opposed to that amendment based on the comprehensive plan and our need to find a way to be able to increase our housing options, helping people expand their living choice in places that are available by foot, bike, and bus, so that we can kind of decrease our dependence on vehicles, which is very important in the comprehensive plan as well, and use this as part of our larger set of tools, including our student housing district and other tools outside of the zoning code, but also including ADUs, and making those more accessible in order to give people options to be able to live and work in Bloomington. And if we don't encourage development in town, we can only move out, increasing our car dependence, and that is not something that we support. So the proposal you see did have 2 Plan Commission amendments. They changed duplex to permitted in those 4 districts and removed one of the use specific standards related to separation, both time and space separation. So the Plan Commission recommended approval of this petition at its March hearing, or I actually believe at the April hearing, and I can answer any questions or not. I'm here if you need me, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Scanlon. I appreciate that overview. For the benefit of our members and the public, there will be no questions. I would like to ask if we're on Amendment 1 of Ordinance 21-23. In order to be consistent, I would like to ask the authors, if they choose of Amendment 1, to give us a synopsis of their amendment to make sure we're still on the same page. Yes, yes.
I believe the amendment needs to be introduced first. It was introduced in committee of the whole, but it needs to be introduced. There was no vote taken. It needs to be introduced.
Yeah.
I introduce Amendment 1.
Sorry, the proper motion would be to adopt Amendment 1.
I move we adopt Amendment 1.
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded. We adopt Amendment 1. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. President,
I'm sorry.
that just as with the ordinances, that would just move us into the presentation and discussion phase.
Thank you. I see no one on my screen, so I'm trying to stay oriented here. Thank you. Will the authors please present?
I will defer to Councilmember Rollo to do a brief recap.
Thank you.
Yes, well, Amendment 1 is in reaction to the Plan Commission revision, which permits duplexes in R1 and R2 and R3 districts. So this is essentially in every neighborhood in Bloomington. We note that this is a massive change in zoning. It reverses policies we've held for decades of trying to increase owner occupancy within especially poor neighborhoods. This amendment is authored by, or sponsored by Councilmembers Sandberg and Smith and myself. We see this as a profound and radical change. It's at odds with our stated goal of owner occupancy. We disagree with planning that what we observe is a significant dearth of single-family homes in Bloomington. Those are the most in demand. This would result in their conversion to apartments. We say that because at present ADUs are allowed, and that requires owner occupancy. So these will be for rentals. It is not an avenue for creating affordable housing. The administration has completely diverged from the comprehensive plan, which states repeatedly to avoid or discourage this type of form in neighborhoods. And we also feel that there hasn't been sufficient discussion of this because it is at odds with the comprehensive plan. Planning should have first moved to amend the comprehensive plan before ignoring it and then proposing this change. So that summarizes our position, unless Councilmember Sandberg or Councilmember Smith would like to add more.
Well, we are not opposed to duplexes or any other form of missing middle housing at all. We just think it's a matter of location. Our amendment also included a concept plan that directs, and this comes from the comprehensive plan as well, that does direct where such density of form could be added without harm to the core neighborhoods, and that would be along the newly established R4, along major corridors, transportation hubs, places where more multifamily housing could be introduced without disruption to the stability of the core neighbors. And that is basically it. Thank you.
Thank you all for that recap. I will ask Mr. Parliamentarian, normal procedures would be to ask staff if they had any comment on this. Is that proper, or do we proceed on to public comment?
I think that's up to you as chair at this point, and based on the recommendations or previous outlined plan to just go directly into public comment to pick up from committee of the whole in a sense, and also based on staff's having briefly addressed this amendment in the recap presentation, I think it'd probably be appropriate to move to public comment.
Thank you very much. As I stated earlier, the council staff has documented all those folks that were still in the queue that was remaining from the last session. I do believe it was 19 or 20 people. You are allowed to have one comment each in public comment per piece of legislation. So I would ask for your cooperation for those that already spoke at the last meeting on this same Amendment 1. And once we hear from those that are in the queue, then we will continue public comment for those that didn't have an opportunity to speak at last week, and then we'll continue on with that. Moving along those veins, I do believe council staff have some written comments that were intended to be read. So I would ask her to proceed with that, and then we'll move on to the list of those in the queue for public comment.
Okay. There were 6 written comments that were not read at the Committee of the Whole. The first is from Mark Fedderson. There are countless ways for the council to conduct social experiments to address the complex issues brought up by so many speakers without breaking a 26-year-old compact with our core neighborhoods. Vote yes to reject a solution to our housing crisis that is clear, obvious, and wrong. Vote yes to reject this social experiment to fix a complicated, multifaceted housing problem with a solution that is, as Joe said, simple, obvious, and wrong. Thank you. The second comment is from Carol Canfield. Thank you all, council members, Ms. Scanlon, and those who have attended and or spoken. This has been an excellent meeting. I support approving Amendment 1 and thank the authors of it for listening to the citizens and bringing it to the forefront for a vote. Please vote no for plexes and yes for the amendment. P.S. I am a resident of Blue Ridge on the north side. P.P.S. I am a lifelong resident of Bloomington. The third comment is from Diane Jung. I support Amendment 1. I am not opposed to duplexes, but I do not feel increasing their numbers will solve the problem of unaffordable housing, which is the real problem. I also like Councilmember Ron Smith's idea for starters. Thank you. The next comment is from Carissa Carmen. The inability to control owner occupancy and large rental companies from exploiting and monopolizing this growth is the biggest setback to the plan. Our neighborhoods cannot support a 6-car, 6 to 8 occupancy plan, which is where this is going. Let's encourage Bloomington to implement a plan that supports first-time homeowners. Let's build an innovation so incredible that college towns look for us to implement. Let's start small, prototype, and implement a plan that is going to work for both sides of this plan. I have one more comment from a member of the public named Jerry with no last name. I want to thank you for attempting to make my 60-year-old home near the campus worth a lot more money. I am a retired real estate developer who owns a second home here and can see how easy and affordable the conversion to a 6-person student duplex would be and profitable. I wouldn't DIY. The problem is it's also really a bad idea from a social policy and humanist perspective. I've lived in better places than Bloomington and in worse places, but the reality is always the same. You can live where you can afford to live. And only through the kindness of strangers, politicians, foundations, churches, trickery, etc., can you afford to live above the amount of money you have. The main reason that cities cannot create affordable housing is the idea is a bit of a myth. Cities can only create rules for developers to exploit in the best sense of the capitalist word. Cities cannot compete with developers because developers have more money than you do. Why is it still a bad idea? It will eventually turn every single family neighborhood within 15 blocks of a university into student housing. The math is too easy to ignore. But if your goal, and I know the university planners would welcome the plan, is to create more student housing, then this is a perfect plan. It is a clever Trojan horse camouflaged as affordable, sustainable, diversified, etc. And inside is money to be made for developers and money not spent by IU. Finally, I lived in a low rent apartment in Manhattan, but wanted to live on Central Park West with a view of the park, but I couldn't afford it. If you want to live in a nice, expensive place, make more money. And that concludes the written comments that were not read at the Committee of the Whole.
Thank you very much.
And then, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
If you'd like to go on to those members of the public who were in the queue but were not called on prior to the conclusion of the meeting, I have that list.
I would, and I may need the help of the parliamentarian. I don't know the best way to do that. If
Point of order, Mr. President. Could I ask a question?
Yes.
Since this, regarding public comments, since this is a new meeting and not a continuation of the committee of the whole, it's my understanding that those who spoke at the last meeting could speak again. Is that correct?
I don't believe that's correct. I'll defer to the parliamentarian.
I would say that it's a choice of the chair how to structure public comment. I think the intent was that to keep things as fair as possible for all members of the public, which should guide all of our processes for public comment. The challenge being that committee of the whole not being able to continue itself or extend itself, and the fact that we ran out of time at that committee of the whole meeting to hear all members of the public. If everyone commented anew, those members who were in the queue last week and did not comment would be at a disadvantage of not having the opportunity to speak twice like others. So I think in the interest of fairness was the suggestion of the chair, but that's just
well, that's I agree that those who hadn't spoken last time be allowed to speak first. But I'm just saying, because this is a unique meeting where we're taking final action, isn't it the case that the public has a right to speak again?
I think the fair thing is that we allow the folks that didn't have an opportunity to speak. We've heard from those that did speak, and we will continue to listen to those that are present now that didn't speak the first time that wish to comment. Just trying to be as fair as possible.
I didn't get my question answered. Is it, Mr. Parliamentarian, is it not true that they could speak again? This is a unique meeting, is it not? That is not in Bloomington Municipal Code that I'm aware of. Again, it's up to the chair to how to structure public comment and debate. And this is unique in the context of not having come out of committee of the whole with a recommendation or the time to finish that meeting. So that's somewhat unusual. And I explained that, but I don't believe this is codified, no. We normally, but this is a matter of
point of order.
What we normally do is go from committee to whole to regular session and allow people to comment at both meetings.
I'll just say, Councilmember Rallo, thank you for your comments. But as the chair, I've structured this meeting, and I would ask that our meeting host or clerk staff, council staff, proceed as we discussed earlier. I would, as I was talking about earlier, I would ask that you go down the list and you could call names. I don't know the best way to get through those 20 is to just ask if they're here and if they'd like to speak, and then we'll continue that way.
I am able to type a search to find the participants, so I can go down the list typing in a search, and then we can ask each of them in the order that they were on the list. The first screen name on the list was Vinley, who is not present. The second is Patrick Murray, who is present. I have asked Patrick Murray to unmute if he would like.
Hello, my name is Patrick Murray.
Hi, I'm Patrick, or Mr. Murray. This is Chair Sims.
Yes.
Before you get started, I hope you're doing fine, but before you get started, I just really wanted to remind those in the public that if you want to comment, please utilize the raised hand function in Zoom, or you can send us a message in chat. And I would also say that the comments are to be directed on Amendment 1, as was recapped a few minutes earlier. That's Amendment 1 of Ordinance 21-23. I apologize for interrupting you, Mr. Murray. Please proceed.
No problem at all. Hello, my name is Patrick Murray, and I support Amendment 1 to eliminate duplexes from the R1, R2, and R3 zones. I would like to speak briefly about conditional use, as it has been proposed as a compromise safeguard over by right development for the neighborhoods. I am a past member of the Board of Zoning Appeals, the BZA, sitting in that position for many years. I want to lend my experience about conditional use in the Board of Zoning Appeals. Conditional use has often been offered as a compromise to by right development, as a way to let the neighborhood have control over the decision-making process as to whether a duplex could be added to their neighborhood by requiring the developer to satisfy 10 criteria outlined in the UDO and to meet with neighbors to hear their concerns or objections. Now, this may slow the process down by a month or so. It may alter a few features of the project, but if the project meets the guidelines and parameters of the UDO for duplexes, the neighborhood's objections will not prevent the project from moving forward. Neither the administrator nor the BZA has the authority to deny the project. If the ordinance language does not specifically require that changes recommended by the neighborhoods be included, the developer is not required to make them for project approval. Conditional use is not a safeguard or a guardrail against the addition of duplexes in the neighborhoods. I call it a wolf in sheep's clothing. Please vote for Amendment 1 to eliminate duplexes from the R1, R2, and R3 zones. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next? Ms. Lacy.
Next person on the list is the screen name NDLEVIN, who is not present. Following that is Jarrett Alexander, who is also not present. Joseph Newcomb, also not present. And Mark's iPad, who is present and should be able to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Mark Cornett, and been following this process closely for a long period of time, including what happened last year with the adoption of the new zoning ordinance. My concerns are many, and one of the things that seems to be overlooked is zoning is how we got here in the first place. It really is a blunt instrument that isn't able to address specific conditions in any particular location because it just says 1, 2, 3, 4 family homes, and that's the end of it. We should be looking at sub-area plans and form-based zoning, form-based codes to allow for a diverse, unique solution to all of the neighborhoods. We haven't addressed anything regarding affordability. We haven't addressed anything regarding what happens in neighborhoods with covenants and restrictions. This gets passed off as a community-wide redrawing of the lines when in fact it only affects a small percentage of the neighborhoods, mostly in the core. We have an extreme pressure from rentals in our community. We're approximately 2/3 rental, 1/3 ownership, which is exactly upside down from the national average of 1/3 rental, 2/3 ownership. Renting costs more money in this community, and we're pursuing rental solutions. If we really want to solve this problem, we need to be looking at the hospital site as a potential test and opportunity to develop a 4-year plan for handling and supplying the inventory that the community demands through the housing study. It would easily fit on that site. It would give us a chance to talk about affordability, to talk about density, to talk about diversity and opportunity, and it could be done in a thoughtful way. And at the same time, with some measures of control that the city has on the property, we could be helping with down payment assistance and many, many pilot programs that could really address a community-wide effort to solve some of these problems. Right now, we're bludgeoning all of those things in the name of change, and single-family zoning is what put us here in the first place. And quite frankly, if you look at the middle missing mantra by the authors of that title, they will clearly tell you that it is a design process and not a zoning process that will solve that. They are very, very careful when they talk.
Mr. Cornett, I'm sorry, but your time is up.
Thank you for your time.
No, thank you for your comments. Who do we have next?
So next is Rebecca's iPhone, who is not present, and Margaret Clemens, who is not present. Then we have Jim Rosenbarger, who is, and Mr. Rosenbarger should be able to unmute.
Thank you. I am Jim Rosenbarger, and I support this amendment. Bloomington skipped an essential public policy discussion about the most significant zoning change in our. That change was introduced to us already written in zoning law. A policy plan, like the comp plan, is written in understandable language. Zoning law is very confusing and provides power to the few who work with it. An example, conditional use gives an impression that residents will have a say in duplex approvals. They won't. Our comp plan, specifically written for Bloomington, seems to have been replaced by a trendy one-size-fits-all experiment. Here's a comp plan quote. It's important to protect the existing single-family housing stock within the core. Here's the trend in Elm Heights. From 1999 to 2020, last year, the transitions of houses from owner-occupied to rentals was 3 times the rate of transitions from rental to owner-occupied. It's a 3-to-1 slide towards rentals in Elm Heights. With an essentially by-right zoning, core neighborhoods already sliding toward all rental will be very vulnerable to a strong student market. Please consider these risks to diversity and affordability. Allowing duplexes will raise property costs immediately because of the guaranteed increased potential income from rental. The rising property costs will impact the same houses that are now the most affordable to home buyers. Another immediate damaging neighborhood change will be a steep drop-off in home buyer interest. It's the other side of this problem. Without strong zoning protections, prospective homeowners will see the writing on the wall and reconsider the wisdom of a 20 or 30-year mortgage. Again, I think that's a 30-year, that's a quick, we're gonna see a quick action in that direction. Planning books can be very helpful, but we are ignoring the planning history written in our own streets. We have many examples of homeowners vanishing from neighborhoods. Duplexes will proliferate without careful caps. We are living in a time when monthly rents cost more than a mortgage payment, and investors read articles about buying to rent. Duplexes are relatively easy to build and can be very profitable. Existing rental houses can be economically converted. Some local investors own more than 30 or 40 houses. Those inventories are subject to purchase by larger companies with the intent of converting them to duplexes. The negligible design requirements included in the zoning will result in jarringly out-of-scale additions to some neighborhoods and make a strong argument against more plexes.
Mr. Rosenbarger, I'm sorry, you've exhausted your time, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacey?
Next, we have Andrew Ruff, who should be able to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Mr. Ruff. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. I've lived in Bloomington my whole life and served at large on the council for 20 years. And on this Plex issue, we've got a lot of relevant experience so we can look back on. And we've heard from many people like Mayor Allison, and we'll hear from others like Charlotte Zitlow, who have really valuable experience on housing and neighborhood history and policies in our community. If we weigh the evidence on whether or not the Plex policy is likely to achieve the goals that proponents hope and claim, and that all of us actually want for the community, the evidence suggests that the Plex proposal is unlikely to achieve those goals. The real experience we have in Bloomington provides much more evidence that the harmful impacts feared by opponents of the policy are significantly more likely to result. This is probably the most ill-considered, risky, dramatic, unjustified reversal of major Bloomington city policies I've seen in my lifetime. We all want to see increases in affordability and sustainability, but if we take a step away from what our hearts hope for and we take a dispassionate, honest look at available, relevant evidence and our own unique community's lived experience, and we listen to testimony of people like Carrie Thompson and Mayor Allison, we can then face the fact that there just isn't a solid reason to believe this policy will promote the strongly desired goals of affordability and sustainability. It'll take hard work, carefully considered policies and programs with significant public investment and community engagement and buy-in to make real progress towards those goals. It's wishful thinking to believe deregulation and free market style policies will bring about the desired social progress in the housing market here. What it's much more likely to do is to significantly undo much of the hard work and progress that's been made to create our healthy, balanced, diverse, sustainable neighborhoods that we're fortunate now to have as an integral part of Bloomington. Another thing it will do, and already has done to an extent, is to create anger, mistrust, and resentment amongst our residents towards our city government. There's absolutely no urgency to be doing this now during this pandemic when our normal, healthy way of doing community business has been so disrupted. The pandemic has created a lot of unavoidable problems and damage, but the damaging civic fallout from this terrible, cynical, opportunistic legislative process was entirely avoidable and totally unnecessary. We dealt with this issue decisively as a community in 2019. Why are we here again? There's no evidence the community's position has changed. If anything, it's more solidified in opposition as awareness and understanding have increased. It's pure political opportunism, and it's harmed trust and confidence of citizens in their city government, and that's its own tragedy in its own right. This proposal is an uncontrolled experiment on the neighborhoods and people of this community. Bloomington is not a computer simulation model, and residents in their homes aren't lab rats. Please vote yes on this amendment. There are other options, many of which are in our comprehensive plan now. We can and must do better than this. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Before we go to the next person, I just want to remind the public that you can indicate your desire to public speak on Amendment 1 of Ordinance 21-23 by using the raised hand function in Zoom, or you could send the meeting host a note on chat to indicate your intent for public speaking. I would also ask that if there's any members of the public that more than one person is using a device, please share that with us so we can do the best we can to let everyone have a public speaking opportunity. Okay, Ms. Lacey, who do we have next?
Next, we have Janice Sorby, who should be able to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Jan Sorby, and I live in the Bryan Park neighborhood. I strongly support Amendment 1. Amendment 1 offers a way to add plexes throughout the city to create more of what we say we want. Neighborhood destination that is just a short walk away from where we live. Using the sites identified in the comprehensive plan, village centers would be chosen to create opportunities to add density with duplexes, fourplexes, live work in apartments over small scale commercial. This would be much like the successful node at Hillside and Henderson. Amendment 1 says sub-area neighborhood studies would be essential to identify key design elements to create compatibility between neighborhoods and the village centers. Approximately 60% of Bryan Park is owned by landlords. No one must buy a house to create a duplex here. All they need to do is a little remodel to make twice as much money. This incentive will lead to demolition and inappropriate additions. Duplexes increase the intensity of use. This means more cars, trash, friends, trips, and noise. None of the duplexes in Bryan Park are owner occupied, and there's no one on site for upkeep. You have been told that there are safeguards to protect the houses from being torn down, but this is not true. With only 42% in Bryan Park that are owner occupied, the development community stopped us from becoming a conservation district. Neighbors are worried because the last time this experiment was tried, it almost destroyed this neighborhood. Last week, 4 peer communities used for this update were listed. I looked at those communities. And in those cities, all 4 cities, I found everyone has kept single family zoning. Not one eliminated single family zoning. Madison, Wisconsin has a great UDO. They have 15 residential zones and about half are single family only. And like Amendment 1, which suggests using neighborhood plans, Madison has 26 neighborhood plans and additional neighborhood development plans. And like the goal of Amendment 1, the single-family zones close to the university in Madison are dotted with village nodes. Madison did the hard work needed to understand how and where to put density. Making changes to people's lives is a serious business, and Bloomington should do the same hard work that Madison did. Please vote for Amendment 1.
I'm sorry. Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, please?
Next, we have Barbara Moss, who should be able to unmute.
Hi, I'm Barbara Moss. I am in favor of Amendment 1. I would just like to note that I'm not affiliated, I'm not this testimony with GFT or any group that has stressed showing utmost politeness, because to borrow a famous quote, I am mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And why? Number one, last week's innuendo that people speaking against upzoning are providing misinformation. Two striking examples. In answer to Councilman Volin's question about built housing units, Jackie Scanlon said, "We sent that information, I believe, to you guys earlier that day. We were asked to review something that you received from the public that had a lot of misinformation in it." A lot of misinformation in it. In part of her response to Councilwoman Scambolari's question on conditional use, Jackie also said, "We know that there has been some misinformation given out at some public presentations." Such disparaging comments made with no backup cast doubt on the validity of anti-upzoning proponents' expert information, to which it obviously refers, which has contradicted in many cases, city planning's information. Such disparaging comments have been unsupported by fact and are really unprofessional. Planning should provide clear, unbiased, accurate information, not provoke bias through innuendo. Number two, actions of the Plan Commission by approving this upzoning, even more than hook, line, and sinker, and the apparent leaning of this council to also do so, are contrary to constituent desire expressed in a 2-to-1 margin, and much even more tonight, it's 100%. This leads to an appearance of politicization of the Plan Commission, and now, unfortunately, to many of you on the City Council. Number three, the why do this in a pandemic argument, dismissed by many as irrelevant. Even more wrong than before. And why? Because I now understand the council was instructed to raise nothing but essential business during this pandemic. Essential business. The total rezoning of our neighborhoods in a pandemic is anything but essential business. So what could ever be the motivation for doing this? Many of you, number four, many of you say Zoom makes the process more fair. Zoom will never take the place of hundreds of people live in city council chambers where a vote on one's position can be counted. On Zoom, you can only know the individual view of each speaker, not the entire attending group. Zoom should only augment, never replace in-person testimonials, especially since most people will choose not to speak, because the two things people fear most in life are death and public speaking. I feel betrayed. You should too, by being put in such a divisive position. Yet it appears most of you will be comfortable approving this with a conditional use amendment that only amounts to fluff.
Ms. Moss, I'm sorry, your time is over. Thank you.
Next, I received a message in chat that Wendy, I think it's Bricht, actually was the screen name Vinley. And so that member of the public should be able to unmute now.
Did you say Miss Brindley?
Bricht.
Britt, I'm sorry.
Hi there. I also wrote in the chat that I'm having trouble getting good, right now I'm traveling, I'm having trouble getting good reception. And if I could wait till I get somewhere where I feel that it won't go out, I'd be happier. Could I raise my hand and speak later?
Can you make a note of that,
yes.
Ms. Lacey? Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, so, Ms. Brett, you get to a stable place, let us know that you're there and ready.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Who do we have next, Ms.
Next,
Lacey?
we have Abby Stemler, who should be able to unmute.
Thank you. Council members, for your commitment to this important conversation. My name is Abby Stemler, and I do not support this amendment. I have lived in Bloomington for 17 years. I now live in Councilmember Rallo's district in Elm Heights. Due to epilepsy, I have not been able to drive for most of the 5 years I have owned my house. Fortunately, the location of my home has allowed me to safely participate in the community. I can walk everywhere. Work, the grocery, restaurants, dentists, you name it. To me, allowing plexes does not just increase housing affordability. It makes the city accessible to lots of different vulnerable populations. However, the only reason I can own my house where I do is because I have one of those rare jobs in the city that gave me the financial ability to buy a $315,000 one bathroom, 2-bedroom house in 2015. A similar house on my street was just listed today for $519,000, way outside of my price range. I keep hearing that if the city embraces plexes, it will be engaging in an ad hoc experiment. This is simply not true. There is strong, clear, and overwhelming evidence that single-family zoning restricts the housing supply, increases car reliance, and undermines inclusion by keeping lower-income households, especially communities of color, out of high-opportunity neighborhoods. Bloomington might be special and unique, and we all love it, but it is still subject to the laws of supply and demand. Don't let the rhetoric that developers will just be cashing in if we allow plexes to distract you. This is not about developers, it's about people and access. Please vote no on Amendment 1 and support plexes. They will be an extremely important part of our housing options. As UCLA professors Manville, Montcohen, and Lenz write, in the 21st century, no city should have any land where nothing can be built except a detached single-family home. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacey?
Next, we have Tom Schaefer, who should be able to unmute.
Present. I'm Tom Schaefer, and I live in Park Ridge East. Like most of the folks responding at this meeting, I support Amendment 1 and oppose plexes in Bloomington neighborhoods, especially in the core neighborhoods near downtown and the IU campus. This year's UDO, while nominally furthering the city's comprehensive plan, actually goes against the spirit and letter of its recommendations, among which is this one, quote, existing core neighborhoods should not be the focus of the city's increasing density, unquote. This is one of a half a dozen or so specific statements in the comp plan that say that new housing be developed outside the core neighborhoods. Why does this proposed UDO work so hard against the comprehensive plan? I have not heard any persuasive arguments that the plexes, especially those proposed near campus, will create affordable housing. The proposed UDO, which relies on market forces to work on behalf of our neighborhoods, ignores the reality of tens of thousands of IU students eager to spend their parents' money on off-campus housing close to downtown. Duplexes offered at the market rate will not be affordable housing. They will not be within the financial reach of the missing middle in our housing market. They will simply add to the density of their neighborhoods and disappoint those seeking housing relief from this false hope of a UDO. My wife and I drove through the core neighborhoods yesterday, and we experienced narrow streets where even in the afternoon, there were streets where parked cars made for slow and careful moving. The on-street parking will decidedly worsen, and the streets will become more undrivable and dangerous when 6 students occupy duplexes where single-family homes once stood. Likewise, so many lot sizes are so small. How can they support duplexes, let alone the proposed triplexes and quads? The infrastructure in these older historic neighborhoods just isn't there to support these plexes. Perhaps that's why increasing the density in the core was condemned in the comprehensive plan. We need to reread the comprehensive plan, which was developed with plenty of conversation and input between city government and neighborhoods. We need to respect its findings and conclusions. The proposed changes to the UDO do not do this, so I urge you to pass Amendment 1. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, please?
Next on the list is Mark Cornett's phone. That individual is not present. Then we have Jeff Richardson, who should be able to unmute.
I'm having some computer problems. I'd like to also please speak a little later. I'll raise my hand and be picked accordingly. Thank you so much.
Next, we have John Lawrence, who should be able to unmute.
Mr. Lawrence?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed, sir. You have about 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is John Lawrence, and I live in the Bryant Park neighborhood. I urge you to please support Amendment 1 so that we can gradually add duplexes into the city in a controlled fashion. I believe we need more density in Bloomington, but we should follow the comprehensive plan and place these forms in appropriate places. I'd like to respond to a comment someone from council made last week regarding conversion of single-family homes to duplexes. In short, the comment regarded the idea that people won't sell their homes because they would have trouble buying another home in this current market. Thus, there would be very few conversions of single-family homes to duplexes. I think this comment misses the mark on a number of levels. First, we're not a closed system. People leave for jobs in other towns, and those houses will be on the market. Second, people are selling their homes and buying bigger homes due to COVID. It's a national trend. I know a number of people who've recently purchased larger houses. But most importantly, 66% of housing in Bloomington is rental property. A huge proportion of single-family homes in Bloomington are already owned by landlords. Incentivizing these rental properties to be converted to duplexes will be a huge motivation for landlords. It's not that complex to convert a single-family home into a duplex, and the results will be devastating. Bloomington has a shortage of single-family homes, period. Single-family homes constantly fluctuate between owner-occupied and rental. Converting a house from rental to owner-occupied is generally not complex. It's really not much different than buying a home and updating it to your own taste. But when that structure has been converted to a duplex, you're looking at an entirely different animal. Duplexes have entire walls and kitchens that need to be removed. The price of remodeling a duplex back to single family will be so prohibitive that it will remove it from the single family market forever. On another note, I'd like to comment on the public process. Much has been said about the limitations of Zoom. We can't see faces, facial expressions, etc. It's a very impersonal approach, but it goes deeper than that. I've attended many city council meetings in the past, and many times I've been accompanied by numerous people who feel strongly about an issue, but for whatever reason are uncomfortable speaking in public. On multiple occasions, I have stated my position and been asked those in the audience who feel the way I do to stand. It's a great way for people to communicate, and frankly, it can save council hours of hearing repeated testimony. You're missing out on this communication. You're not getting to see people's reactions to testimony. It's a shame that we've had to push this incredibly important topic during a pandemic. So back to my first point, please support Amendment 1 so that we can protect our much needed single family homes. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacey?
Karen Duffy, who should be able to unmute.
Oops.
Ms. Duffy?
Wait, am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are. You have about 3 minutes.
Oh,
we
great.
hear you fine.
Thank you. Okay, my name is Karen Duffy, and I live in the near West Side neighborhood. I strongly support Amendment 1, and I urge you to support it as well. Last week, a speaker at this same meeting told you he was convinced that real estate agents and developers are eager to see single-family zoning eliminated in Bloomington, a change that would hand them the opportunity to convert houses to apartments for the rental market so as to increase their profits. The speaker knew this, he said, because he'd recently had dinner with several of them and they'd spoken openly about their plans. I haven't been wined and dined, but I and many of my near West Side neighbors have received numerous letters, postcards, and phone calls with offers to buy our properties as is on a cash basis, and even sometimes with no realtor fees. The timing of these offers corresponds precisely with the City Council debates on zoning proposals, first in late 2019, and now as we find ourselves facing the issue yet again in early 2021. Is it any wonder we're dismayed about revisiting this issue and skeptical of the motives of the people contacting us so relentlessly? We don't for a minute believe that they are doing so for the sake of affordability, equity, or combating climate change. They're after hefty profits, and young families in search of starter homes won't have a chance competing against them. Once again, I urge you to support Amendment 1, protect our limited stock of single-family housing and our irreplaceable core neighborhoods, and look back to the comprehensive plan and the ideas it presents for adding housing to Bloomington. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacey?
Final person in this list, excepting the ones who have requested to speak later, is the person with the screen named Eric, who should be able to unmute and state their full name.
Hello, thank you. My name is Eric Ost, and I would like to thank all members of the City Council for your thoughtful investment of time and attention in service to our community. I ask that you vote to support and adopt Amendment 1. Recently proposed revisions to our Unified Development Ordinance are intended to find effective ways to increase housing affordability, equity, and inclusion. We do need more housing, but the proposed UDO revisions will not lead to the creation of the types of housing our community needs and wants. These proposed revisions are actually primed to amplify trust in the market. This in turn will, by effect, increase distrust among members of our community. The concept plan included in the council meeting packet and mentioned by a community member at the last meeting, excuse me, is a way forward that allows us to follow a different path as a community and build trust. Continuing to trust that market forces will provide the types of housing we need and the numbers and types we need is not supported by lived experience in our community, and it is not a prudent course of action at this time. Members of the public who have offered comment at last meeting and at tonight's meeting speak to this fact as their lived experience. Incenting duplexes, especially incenting duplexes in the core neighborhoods, will result in unaffordable rents and even more unaffordable sale prices. Simply increasing density will not lead to greater affordability, but it will lead to greater profits. And it will lead to decreased opportunities for home ownership by individuals and families who want to live in those homes. The proposed revisions to the UDO have been described as an exercise and experiment. It is an experiment that poses tangible risks. In the spirit of minimizing risk and harm, we might carefully consider the parameters of this experiment. If the proposed zoning map that council will consider in the near future is approved, then our community will begin an experiment involving duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes. The R4 zoning district has been designed to allow those plexes. The proposed map rezones over 1,200 properties throughout our community to be zoned as R4. This is a significant number of properties. If duplexes are also allowed as permitted or conditional use in zones R1, R2, R3, The number of properties included in this experiment will increase to over 12,000. This is an order of magnitude greater number of properties to be included in the experiment. Expanding our community's experiment to this extent is in fact unnecessary. Thus, I sincerely request that you vote to adopt Amendment 1. And as an alternative to entrusting market forces to provide the kinds of housing we need, let us consider using existing tools. These tools include continuing the ongoing use of ADUs, encouragement of ADUs, which members of our community have specifically attested are effective, implementing the concept plan.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry, sir.
Okay, and then one other thing, I just want to support Ron Smith's suggestion to use ARA funds for housing. So thank you.
You're welcome. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacy?
That concludes the members of the public who had raised their hand and were in the queue prior to the end of Committee of the Whole. Next, we have the person with the screen name STVED, who should be able to unmute.
Hi, my name is Vita Stanfield. I live in the near West Side neighborhood. I rented a house here 45 years ago, and we bought a modest house 30 years ago. We've been fixing up our house ever since. Before I retired, I worked in this neighborhood. I was a caseworker at Big Brothers Big Sisters when the office was a block from my home. I facilitated programs for kids at Girls Inc. I directed the extended day program and a mentoring program for Fairview Elementary. The thing I've always most loved about my neighborhood is the diversity of all kinds. In terms of housing stock, we have owner-occupied homes, duplexes, student rentals, and some of the least expensive rental housing in the city. I have neighbors who don't own cars because they can't afford them. They walk or bike to low-wage jobs downtown. If those rental properties are sold and converted to market rate plexes, it will displace those neighbors, and there is nowhere else in town for them to go. This UDO experiment has the potential to disrupt a neighborhood that is already diverse and dense, and that is working for the people who live here. It may do great harm to some of my poorest neighbors, and none of us want that. I beg you not to risk the damage that this experimental proposal may do to my neighborhood. Please do no harm and vote to support Amendment 1. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Next, we have the person with the screen name Diane Legomsky, who should be able to unmute.
Yes, hi, I'm Diane Legomsky. I'm a very involved community advocate for immigration and for racial and low-income and middle-income inclusion. This is why I strongly support Amendment 1. I'll address the housing affordability crisis and the havoc it's wreaked on families. So far, I've seen no proof that these new plexes will be affordable, nor any indication that developers will be faced with pressure, incentive, or any moral urge to make them affordable. A recent HT article ended by saying, fewer people, especially on the low end of the wage scale, can afford to pay for housing in Bloomington and still have enough money left over to live comfortably. Well, my problem is they're not looking to live comfortably, they're looking to live safely. And although to live safely, they shouldn't be budgeting more than 20% or most 30% of their income on rent or mortgage, they nevertheless are forced to do so. The greatest housing shortage is for households making less than $25,000. And HUD Section 8 housing assistance won't help. It's basically for families whose income doesn't exceed 50% of the median income for the area in which they live. Importantly, a raise in rent, a foreclosure, and eviction, these are the Damocles swords already hanging over the heads of low-income and low-middle families, it's hard even to fathom the precariousness and vicious circle in which they live. And this proposal doesn't fix this, but rather entrenches it. In effect, the proposed new rentals in our 1, 2, and 3, and especially core neighborhoods, are not for the low income or low middle income. And if the potential for higher housing costs is realized, it will continue the segregation of many low and low middle income families, keeping them farther from our downtown resources, including social services, as well as rental, retail, banking, police, fire, and often public transportation. Even then, affordable housing is hard to find. This proposal drastically changes people's neighborhoods and their lives and is giving a shock to home buyers who purchased their home prior to this UDO. Also, of course, this deregulation contradicts Bloomington's own comprehensive plan. I haven't seen any viable reason for the zoning deregulation. Unlike Chicago, New York City, DC, Seattle, LA, Bloomington is not facing that kind of space crisis that induced these other cities to densify their single family and core neighborhoods with plexes. So adding to the number of rentals is at best a theoretical and only partial solution for greater affordability. I hear UDO experts saying probably, likely, I think. It's an untested experiment and one that is not realistically reversible. So finally, even the conditional use, as opposed to by right, will end up depowering the voice of neighborhood associations and HOA covenants. You have to heed the will of the residents, the desperate housing needs of low and low middle income families, and Bloomington's own comprehensive plan. I hope that you will pass Amendment 1. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comments. I would like to remind everyone present that are wishing to speak, you will be allowed 3 minutes to make a public comment. I would also ask that you indicate your intent to speak by using the raised hand function in Zoom, or you can send our meeting host a note on chat, and so you could be recognized. And I would also ask that if we have more than one person per device who wishes to speak, please let us know so we can acknowledge them. Thank you. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacey?
Next, we have the person with the screen name Barbara 2, who should be able to unmute.
Hello, my name is Barbara Lechner, and I have owned a single-family home in Sycamore Knolls for 10 years. Prior to that, I rented a single-family home near the Elm Heights division for 2 years. I oppose the UDO proposals to allow plexes in established neighborhoods. I am retired, but I am not opposed to growth and change. However, I do not understand why the Planning Commission has placed their focus on core neighborhoods when there are several alternatives. I agree with the amendment documents of Rallo, Sandberg, and Smith suggesting new village centers, including development of the old hospital grounds and several other projects. What I would like to remind you about is the East Side Kmart property, possibly the Macy's parking lot and portion of the mall being developed into residential living. This large parcel is surrounded by amenities with public transportation to downtown and the university. These all fit the Planning Commission's memo of April 15th this year as walkable, bikeable neighborhoods that are transit and amenity adjacent and served by public infrastructure, end of quote. Why not make these developments affordable, mixed single family and plexes, space and small lots? As a community, we need to create new desirable neighborhoods, not destroy the ones already created. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacey?
Apologize.
It's okay.
Next is Mara Leah Rosenbarger, who should be able to unmute.
Good evening. My name is Mara Lee Rosenbarger, and I live in Elm Heights. We've been here for over 30 years. Before that, I also rented in other areas. At the last council meeting, Council President Sims asked councilpersons Rollo and Sandberg, where would they go? Mr. Sims was referring to homeowners that might leave their in-town neighborhoods due to the results of allowing by right duplexes in the core neighborhoods. Why would we leave? The results we expect, based on years of experience, is that real estate development will likely create more of a monoculture of high rent housing. Property investors have no true interest in neighborliness or community. Their interest is profit, and they market their properties to IU students who will pay the high rents. These investment properties drive up the cost of housing, discourage owner occupants at various levels of income. We know we live in the midst of this already, and if the trend continues, we might move. So to answer the question, we don't know where we will go. We don't want a bigger or better or newer house. We would be sad and discouraged to leave. We wouldn't be leaving just a house. I'm still hoping that there could be a better process to plan for the growth of Bloomington in a responsible way that honors and includes citizens who have helped to create and sustain a vibrant community. If by right duplexes are approved, my neighborhood will probably go the way of others before it becoming a monoculture high rent area. That would be a loss not only to us, but to Bloomington. The in-town neighborhoods are diverse, and we value that, as do others. I want to state the obvious, that actions have consequences. When investment development has a free pass, there will be no affordable housing for those who live and want to stay in our community. The speculative and hoped for gains cannot make up for the damage that will occur. It's not a balanced nor honest equation. We need leadership and guidance for this challenge. Why would this council want our city to give up control and hand it to the so-called free market that does not answer to our community and that comes at our cost? City planners could instead create site-specific neighborhood plans that make sense for Bloomingtonians and that truly do the work to provide affordability and smart growth for our city. Therefore, I support and I ask you to vote yes for this Amendment 1. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacey?
Next, we have Sarah Mitchell, who should be able to unmute.
Are you there, Ms. Mitchell?
Hello.
Hi, Ms. Mitchell. Yes.
Yes, I am.
Thank
sorry,
you.
I lost my discourse for a moment.
I'm sorry. You have about 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yes. And I would ask you, the council and the mayor, to support Amendment 1. Please respect the very significant opposition and concern being expressed by a majority of the residents of the very neighbourhoods that will be most affected by this proposal, those closest to campus. Please understand that many of us feel just as so many UDO proponents do. We care about increasing affordable housing, diversifying our neighbourhoods, and making them more sustainable. We just don't believe this UDO is the way to achieve those ends. In fact, we have too much evidence already to show that none of these goals will be achieved by the imposition of this measure, which will instead be a godsend to developers and rental companies. Please spend more time exploring more democratically existing alternatives to this already divisive proposal, which is likely to have harmful and probably irreversible effects. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. You're muted, Ms. Lacey.
Sorry.
That's
Next,
okay.
we have Carol McGarry. who should be able to unmute.
I see. I'm Carol McGarry, and I live in Green Acres. I've lived in Green Acres for over 50 years. I've actually been a homeowner in Green Acres for a little less than 20 years. I've watched this neighborhood, which is just east of the IU campus, transition steadily from owner-occupied single-family homes to primarily student-occupied rentals. I've watched housing prices double and sometimes triple over this change. And it's all about the income potential of rental properties. I can only see this becoming so much worse if we allow duplexes, triplexes, and bringing another neighborhood which will not be able to add to our available housing for entry-level families who want to live in Bloomington, but simply can't afford to. I really appreciate all the comments that everyone else before me has made. I appreciate their study of the issue, and I urge you to support Amendment 1. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. McGarry. Who do we have next? Ms. Lacey.
Next is Robert Schneider, who should be able to unmute.
Thank you. I speak in favor of Amendment 1, and I'd like to make 2 points. First, if someone were to tell me that there is an unspecified but controversial policy before the public, which apparently has mostly young people with few resources pitted against generally an older, well-established generation, and asked me to choose a side, I would naturally go for the former. At some point, however, I would be moved to ask whether the interests of the less advantaged partisans were really going to be served by the policy they supported. I think that's one way to understand the issue before us. Yes, in general, increasing supply in any commodity brings down the price. And yes, as for housing, building or creating smaller units is one way to increase supply. But adhering to such simplistic market reasoning, that is, capitulating to neoliberal thinking at its baldest, ignores local realities and flies in the face of what stands behind, in Bloomington, an actual place, those abstract categories of supply and demand. The sources of the supply will not be publicly minded builders or realtors happy to see a minimal return on their substantial investments, but quite the opposite. The demand is not faceless, not an abstraction. It will be driven by short-term renters, mostly, alas, undergraduates with cars, thrilled to live close to campus and able to pay top dollar to do so. Those truly in need of affordable housing will be outbid. They will not be served. Second, we have heard many times, it seems to assuage those of us who oppose upzoning, that this is merely an experiment. It has been said, it has been written. This, of course, suggests a whole host of questions. Are a neighborhood, a community, a housing stock comparable to a chemistry lab? Is this a rigorously monitored pilot program? Hardly. Be that as it may, if those who have made this assurance are really sincere and not offering this merely as a rhetorical distraction, then let's take it seriously. In other words, if this is indeed an experiment, how do we know whether it has succeeded or failed? What are the criteria for success or failure? And who determines these criteria, which must be established in advance? In fact, I would like to charge here and now those council members who have endorsed this plan as an experiment, as well as the mayor, mayor who has several times qualified it as such, to demonstrate to us that they have offered this assurance in good faith by publicly articulating the criteria of this experiment's success or failure. You owe at least this much to us. If you cannot do this, then kindly withdraw it as a qualifier. Otherwise, I'm afraid it's merely a deception.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacey?
Next, we have the person with the screen name Jill C, who should be able to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you give us your full name, please?
My name's Jill Crawford. I have lived in Bloomington for 44 years and have owned a home in the East Side neighborhood for 35 years. I attended the Zoom council meeting on April 28, along with nearly 300 other people. In case it slipped anyone's attention that evening, comments in opposition to allowing plexes in core neighborhoods outnumbered supporting comments in a ratio of greater than 2-to-1. And tonight it's blown out of the water. 5.5 hours after the onset of the meeting, there were still 134 citizens in attendance. I and my fellow opposers were accused of being old, retired, non-mortgage paying, and being able to attend the meeting because we have nothing better to do with our time as opposed to young people who have to be at work and take care of children, or they would have been in attendance in greater numbers. Really? Was it not enough to call us racist and elitist and student haters who are trying to keep, quote, certain people out of our neighborhoods? Is there no end to shaming us for wanting to live in neighborhoods that already have density because we're surrounded by as many homes renting out 3 to 4 bedrooms to unrelated people as we are surrounded by families living in single family homes? The 18 rental bedrooms within a stone throw of me will become 36 when you allow duplexes. The 18 cars will become 36. 6 air conditioners will become 12, etc. Why are you shaming me for trying to live peacefully in a neighborhood that already has density? Did you listen at the meeting last Wednesday, Council? Did you keep the numbers? Are your minds already made? Is there any way that you can vote against Amendment 1 and feel like you're representing the citizens of Bloomington? Do you think we will be appeased by your passing the conditional use of plexes in core neighborhoods? Is the reason for conditional use zoning so neighbors can air objections? Are we to believe that holds any weight when we are voicing our objections now and it's not making a difference? Councilman Sims, at the last meeting, you said you thought there wouldn't be a rush of people selling their homes to be converted to duplexes. For one thing, where would these people go with such a shortage of housing? Good point. However, I'm not concerned that my owner-occupied single-family home neighbors will run out and sell their homes. I'm concerned about the 50% of homes near me that are being rented out, managed by rental companies who charge fees and whose sale to developers means nothing to them other than greater profits. As our neighborhood rental ratio creeps in the 70 to 75% range, you'll see a huge abandonment of single-family homeowners.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Your time is over. I'm sorry. Thank you for your comments.
Next, we have the person with the screen name ND Levin at iu.edu, and that person should be able to unmute.
Yeah, I think you can hear me now. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Natalie Levin. I'm a Prospect Hill resident, and my husband and I bought our house in 2013 when it was quite a bit less expensive. And our house required a significant amount of renovation, which my husband happened to have the professional skills to do. And we're on the younger side, and not many people our age can afford to live in this neighborhood. So it's already unaffordable here. And we already have investors buying up houses in the area. So to me, the reality is that as cheaper houses in disrepair like the one that we bought go onto the market, they will either be purchased by flippers or by landlords, or they're already owned by landlords in many cases. So Plexes would offer the opportunity for more people who can't afford a $500,000 home to actually be able to live in these neighborhoods as renters. So I ask that you not adopt Amendment 1. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next? Ms. Lacey?
Next we have Corey Ray, who should be able to unmute.
Hello, I think I got myself unmuted there.
Yes, you did. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
All right. Thank you to the City Council for being here tonight and allowing for the testimony on this important issue. My name is Corey Ray, and in my day job, I work on conservation and environmental legislation for Sierra Club. I have lived in Bloomington area most of my entire life, and I've chosen to work in my career path because of my strong belief that we can and should be better in communities like ours and beyond. Bloomington has the opportunity to change our destiny and become a more welcoming, diverse, and economically welcoming city that inspires other communities to do the same. Aside from genuinely striving to live up to the image and hopes that so many have spoke about on this call of being welcoming and diverse, we stand at the corner of opportunity of leading in many areas. We can show that Bloomington can challenge and tear down systems developed in an era of segregation. We can prove we are committed to the interest and well-being of young families, and we can show that we are willing to stand up for the benefit of many and not just economic benefits that would help a privileged few. We can show that we will pass policy that will allow for smaller carbon footprints and for greener, more environmentally friendly housing options that opens up the door for so much more opportunity. To do this, we must be open-minded to more dense, affordable housing in our core neighborhoods. We cannot be driven by fear and ifs and whats and slippery slopes and exclusionary policies that do not benefit the vast majority of those who would inherit the future. That is why I'm opposed to this amendment, and I urge the council to please consider alternatives. If I were to view this amendment in the same lens of my professional occupation, I would not recommend this as environmentally safe or in the verge of a morally just path forward. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacey?
Next, we have Constance Glenn, who should be able to unmute.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm Constance Cook Glenn. I teach at IU. I appreciate students very much, and you have all heard from me via email, but I have not spoken at these meetings. First, I want to thank you for all that you do for our city, and I want to thank you for listening to me and to all of us time and time again, with many of us who are opposed to upzoning saying pretty much the same thing. Please hear us when we say pretty much the same thing, because we too are passionate about working towards environmental and economic solutions within Bloomington, and we too are spending hours and hours on this issue during a pandemic with a very difficult communication system where no individuals can be seen, possibly reducing the impact of their comments. You heard from us this afternoon when we wrote about how concerned we are that we have an extreme level of division within our community over upzoning. This is not a good situation. Please take the energy that is so strong and work with us to solve housing needs in ways that do not destroy core neighborhoods. We think that given the upsurge of support from the community, we can work together and solve many problems. Please look at the more recent articles about the practical results and implications of upzoning in Seattle and other cities where the experiment has not been a success, but instead has resulted in increased housing costs, both rental and ownership, and increased demographic homogeneity. In Bloomington, as many have already said, we have a specific and unique situation with so many transient residents whose lifestyles are incompatible with family lives. Many in Bloomington owe their living to these transient residents, and they are, as a group, a positive addition to our city and state. But these residents can afford high levels of rent, and since we still live in a capitalistic society, there is no reason that the developers of duplexes should keep their prices at an accessible or sustainable level. It is all about the math. I know this is the opposite of what the upzoning proponents intend, but it is the practical and unfortunate outcome of deregulation in a society where financial profit is prized over affordability and caring for our underserved populations. This proposal will not fix these problems. There are plenty of alternative approaches that can make a difference and help, but this one will bite us. For one, let's work to improve our public transportation. Let's work to improve additional assistance for accessible and sustainable housing, to develop villages within the city that are not at odds with existing housing. Right now, it feels like we are at each other's throats and that this division is tearing us apart as a city. We don't want this. We know you don't want this. Let's stop this harmful experiment.
President Obama warned the left of creating a circular firing squad, and indeed that is exactly what it feels like we have here. Accusations of racism, classism, inequity leveled at the very people who have spent decades working as anti-racist and for social justice. This kind of alienation is destructive, and some of it is encouraged by members of the administration with blatant disregard for the expertise of community members, which in some cases is much greater than anyone in the administration. I'm going to ask once again that we honor the democratic process and the majority opinions that have been expressed and vote for Amendment 1. I'm going to ask that we work together.
Ms. Glenn, I'm sorry, your time has been exhausted. Thank you.
Very much.
And before we move forward, I'd like to remind all those who wish to speak public comments that you will have 3 minutes to speak publicly. Please indicate by using the raised hand function in Zoom, or sending a chat via, sending us a note via chat to our meeting host so that you could be duly recognized. I would also ask that if we have members, more than one person on a device, to please let us know that so that we could make sure we acknowledge you. Thank you. Ms. Lacey, who do we have next?
Next, we have a person with the screen name Glenda, who should be able to unmute.
Hello, my name is Glenda Murray. I live in Prospect Hill, and I was the redevelopment director in the city of Bloomington in the late 80s and early 90s. So I do have some experience in Bloomington, both as a resident and having worked in city government and working for community development. I'd like to speak in support of Amendment 1. Please remove the duplexes from R1, 2, and 3. Then let's work together to see where they are appropriate in the city. I support affordable housing, but I do not believe that the building of duplexes throughout the core neighborhoods will accomplish that goal. The idea of allowing core duplexes in the core neighborhoods is urban renewal in slow motion. That is the demolition of the existing neighborhoods. Upzoning will completely change the neighborhoods over time into even more rentals, leading to neighborhoods that are not as desirable for families, working folks, and retirees. Whether this happens to a few houses in a year or a lot of houses in a year, the end result will be the same. Using major cities as examples of the kinds by being compared to Bloomington is not comparing apples to apples. We are a small city, which is about half student. Our living patterns and our zoning needs are very different from the major cities that have many industries and businesses. In our case, we have a major university that is an overwhelming presence. Let's see how much of the federal pandemic funds can be used to address some of these housing issues. Let's study the hospitals. Let's use the hospital site plan and provide for more housing units. Let's create neighborhood plans that help identify other areas. Please vote for Amendment 1, and let's look at the issue of affordable housing in different ways. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Murray. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacey?
Next, we have Iris Kiesling, who should be able to unmute.
Okay, that's what I just did.
We hear you fine.
Okay, you can hear me, okay.
Yes, thank you.
I'm Iris Kiesling. As many of you know, I'm a former city council member for about 7 or 8 years, and then I was 20 years a member of the county commissioners, and I follow some of what you've been doing, but as a city council member, I had many of these discussions, so this is not new. And I'm sorry that you're doing this during the pandemic, because I find a lot of people have not been able to follow what's going on and what you're proposing. I support Amendment 1. I believe that's the best way for us to go. And there are a couple of observations that I had noted before, but I noticed someone else mentioned it. I've been on the hospital reuse committee. That's one place we can build a lot, and certainly in the neighborhood of Isabel Piedmont Smith, there's a lot of stuff going on there too. That's probably going to go. Kmart sites and Macy's, and there's so many sites that are going to go. I think we should not be starting to redo what we've done in the past. And I'm sorry to see that we're kind of going down this path again, as we have done before, and I think we should not. So I support the amendment that's being proposed at this time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Teasley. Who do we have next, please?
Next, we have Ann Creelcamp, who should be able to unmute.
Hi, yeah, it's Creelcamp.
Thank you, Ms. Creelcamp. You have about 3 minutes.
Yes. Way back in 2006, a number of Green Acres residents got together and worked for months with city officials to translate a permacultural vision for Green Acres neighborhood into bureaucratic language. This document, known as the Green Acres Neighborhood Plan, bears the distinction of having been the only neighborhood to work with the city in this manner, the only neighborhood in which the word sustainable is featured in its vision statement, and the only neighborhood whose long-term plan was both endorsed and featured by the Bloomington Planning Department. I wrote the foreword to this document, which is still present as a PDF on the city's website. Now, if our globalist mayor and his minions get their way, Green Acres neighborhood with its smaller homes and lots will be a prime target for outside developers who will rush in to either tear down existing homes and rebuild or renovate them into duplexes in the R3 and multiplexes in the R4 with a goal of profit, either flipping them or charging higher rents. I cannot imagine a more powerful way to transmogrify Green Acres neighborhood into, frankly, an anonymous, gentrified, urbanized Agenda 2130 dystopia that in no way meets the vision of the Green Acres neighborhood plan, the needs of either current and future Bloomington residents, or the growth ideals as outlined in the UDO, which, yes, is a living document that shouldn't be killed off to satisfy the selfish interests of a few against the many. I meant the comprehensive document, not the comprehensive plan, not the UDO. Thank you. So I please support Amendment 1.
Thank you for your comments.
Next, we have a person with a screen name Lois, who I believe is Lois Sabo-Skelton, who should be able to unmute.
Do you hear?
Ms. Sabo-Skelton, are you ready?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. You have about 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Thank you. I support Amendment 1. My name is Lois Sabo-Skelton, and I've lived at 121 North Overhill Drive in Green Acres since 1972. So I feel I'm a bit of an expert in the evolution of a neighborhood. I've seen how the restriction to single-family homes has helped our area begin to make this area livable again to families as well to our students and other types of renters. But even with this restriction to 3 unrelated persons in a house, the need for more parking and traveling in the area is problematic to say the least. And with the underpass, we now have it all doubled, even tripled, with cyclists, skateboarders, along with our cars, scooters, and walkers. Well, they better be alert, and you better be prepared to jump off the street and the few sidewalks we have, or they will run you down. The idea that our population could be increased even a little bit is asking for more trouble and danger to all our areas, especially for our kids. We have new families moving in with children in public school, and I've witnessed the school buses having problems negotiating around cars in narrow streets, as there is still no decent parking design, only Band-Aid solutions. These last few weeks, I have walked and talked with my neighbors, yes, masked and distanced, both renters, my students, and homeowners. None welcome the potential increases that will happen if this multiplex idea is enacted. They ask, are we going to double, triple, quadruple our parking? Where are we going to put 5 more trash cans? We're doubling, we're tripling our density. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at capacity now. Council, there must be a better way. I invite you, before you decide on anything, to walk my neighborhood with me. Call me at any time and I will meet you, 339-9678. You can Google me, it's okay. Over the past meetings, you have heard from your public with many good points and ideas. As a member of a school board for many years, I offer you this from my own experience. Whenever we had a concerned public and we stopped and worked with them, we came out ahead. We came up with better plans that helped everyone, and we built the trust of our public. And this is the point, we trust you. We trust you to listen to us and to work with us. Tonight, I offer my services to be on any committee to work with the city administration, corporations, and representatives from all our neighborhoods to make a better plan. I know it can be done. And that's what this really is about, working with our community so that they can trust you to do the right thing. Support this Amendment 1. Stop these duplexes and triplexes and whatever plexes, and then let's get down and work together. And together, we can do the right thing for our people who are truly in need in our city and in our county. Good evening.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Sabo-Skelton.
You're welcome.
Who do we have next, Ms. Lacey?
We have Jeff Richardson, who should be able to unmute.
Here we go. Thank you very much. My name is Jeff Richardson. I live in Elm Heights, and I favor Amendment 1. Single-family homes are not the problem. A mix of housing could be achieved without increasing property values if we think this through together. Rushing into this means we are guaranteeing negative impacts. Bloomington is worthy of the creative solutions our intelligent public and experts can create together in the process of creating the village centers and the form-based code that goes along with it. This is why I specifically support the concept plan, which is a key component of Amendment 1, developed by Barry Clapper and Jim Rosenbarger, who live and breathe these issues every day, as do planning and housing experts like Carrie Thompson, Marcus Conant, Bob Meadows, Glenda Murray, and many others who support Amendment 1. This concept plan outlines a thoughtful, clear, logical, and results-oriented plan that fully engages our citizens, neighborhood by neighborhood. This plan can begin quickly, and we can start working toward establishing long-lasting village centers that will lift up all Bloomington neighborhoods. I'm committed, as many are on this call, to work for affordable housing, a real affordable housing plan. This has evolved really this current plan into a density plan. Finally, I support efforts by all city council members to secure federal and state funds to support affordable housing initiatives or any other way that we can secure support. I'm happy to be engaged in that process. Please support Amendment 1. And thank you all for your hard work and thought to this very challenging process. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Next, we have Elizabeth Gallman, who should be able to unmute.
Thank you so much. I'm Elizabeth Gallman, urging you to support Amendment 1. There have been many wonderful comments, all supporting this amendment tonight, to which I would be under stress to make anything any better. I do think the core neighborhoods need our support. They need our stability. We need to promote their stability. And furthermore, there is nothing in the duplex proposal that guarantees they will either be affordable or solve the population problem. Thank you so much, and please support Amendment 1.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Coleman. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacey?
Next is Rick Wells, who should be able to unmute.
Hi, I'm in favor of the amendment, and I appreciate the wisdom and the courage of its authors. When my family moved to town for the second time in late December 2010, I backed my car with a small U-Haul in the driveway of the home that I owned. It was snowing and I wanted to be in position to unload in the morning. In the morning, I found a ticket on my windshield. Within 8 hours, I had been fined $50 for parking illegally in that city zone. The more I talked to my neighbors, some of whom are students, law enforcement, and even my councilman who lived 3 doors down, it was clear there was never an intent in situations like mine to get a ticket, but I did, and I had to pay it. It's beyond my mental capacity to understand why a small elected group wishes to unleash what I would consider a radical concept into the lives of potentially tens of thousands of citizens that could impact generational investments in property. The one constant is everyone in this discussion agrees the consequences are literally unknown. The intent might never be realized. I wonder what the misses will look like. I support the amendment. To me, it's an indication of hope that this problem can be solved in a different manner. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Ms. Lacey.
Next, we have the person with the screen name Stavropoulos, who should be able to unmute.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Janet Stavropoulos. I live in Blue Ridge. I am in favor of Amendment 1. Many great arguments in its favor have been put forth before mine. I would just like to say that there are other alternatives to the housing density issue in Bloomington. And as far as looking at our core neighborhoods, this is not an experiment, as the mayor and certain council people in favor of it have talked about it. This is not something that could be reversed. If we go down this path, then developers will rely on this in the future. They have much deeper pockets than the city of Bloomington or its legal department. We cannot go back from this decision. So we need to stop looking at Bloomington residents in the core neighborhoods and in all neighborhoods as experimental animals subject to stimuli and deprivation at will. We need to look at alternatives that are realistic, that are basically core to our values, to our neighborhoods, to Bloomington as it has evolved, and go from there. This is not something that can be imposed by the mayor or his adherents. And basically, in light of the fact that tonight, only 2 people have spoken in favor of upzoning, I think we need to look at this and its implications for the democratic process in Bloomington. We are not experimental animals. We do not need to be imposed upon, regardless of our views or our backgrounds. Please vote for Amendment 1. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. What do we have next, Ms. Lacey?
Next is Sandy Clothier, who, oh, hold up, sorry. Who should now be able to unmute.
Hello.
Hello. How are you, Ms. Clothier? You have about 3 minutes.
I'm good, thank you. What is a constituent? A constituent is a person who authorizes another to act in his or her behalf as a voter in a district represented by an elected official. What is not a constituent? Anyone not in the elected official's jurisdiction. So who is this mayor working for? Not us. He's basically admitted he won't really, we don't hold any sway with him. Maybe those he wants to annex, most likely not. They've already said they don't want annexation. I bring this up because honestly, there is nothing we can say, we residents of Bloomington, that hasn't already been said and dismissed by the mayor, by his appointed plan commission, his planning staff, and by several members of this council. So what is our role as residents? Don't worry, this is an experiment. We can change it if we don't like it. Really, if who doesn't like it? It's obvious it's not about us liking or not liking it, right? In my block of West 6th Street, there are 8 to 9 single-family homes lived in by their owners. There are an additional 3 to 4 duplexes, 1 triplex, and the rest are single-family rentals. It's a wonderful place to live, but it's also at the tipping point because at least half of the homes are investor-owned. Over the years, it has become a place where people come and stay a long time, whether they're renters or owners. Allowing duplexing by right will allow for investors to retake this neighborhood, which is stable primarily because of the introduction of single-family zoning. That signaled to investors at that time to explore other areas in order to protect the affordable housing that existed and still exists here today. So I ask you to say yes to Amendment 1 and help us preserve the small affordable homes that still exist in Bloomington and direct any needed development where it will do no harm along corridors and in vacant or underused lots that are near commercial hubs, and to look at creating other hubs with walkable neighborhoods in other areas of Bloomington. And I ask you, if what so many residents of Bloomington in overwhelming numbers cannot, if we cannot convince you of the course that you must take, who do you really represent? Thank you.